Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel, and welcome to the round one of the Lindores Abbey the Chess Stars tournament in 2019 in Scotland. So, in this tournament, we have a really nice setup of players. We have Dean Lear, Magnus Carlsen, Viswanathan Anand, and Sergey Karjakin. They will play in this rapid tournament, two Robin rounds. So they will play against each other, and we will have six exciting rounds. So this tournament will be today and tomorrow. So tomorrow we'll know who is the winner of this tournament. But this tournament can maybe be also historical moment, because in this tournament Magnus Carlsen can break his world record in this rapid rating. So I think what we've seen so far by Magnus Carlsen this year, this is not something unrealistic. I think he will break this record. But in this first round we had already a draw game between Dingliren and Magnus Carlsen, and today I wanted to show you this game played by Sergey Karjakin against Viswanathan Anand. So Sergey Karjakin, also a very nice and fast calculator in chess. He was also the world champion in blitz in chess. So Viswanathan Anand also the world champion in rapid chess. So as said, this is really a cool battle. We have also Ding Liren, who is also playing very nice chess, and I don't want to spend no more words about Magnus Carlsen. So we all know about Magnus Carlsen. So let's see now this beauty between Sergey Karjakin and Viswanathan Anand. We have d4 by Karjakin, here knight on f6 by Anand, and now c4, e6, the Nimzo-Indian defense, and now knight on f3, the counter Nimzo-Indian setup. It's most often played now these days, because we're not allowing here this knight on c3 and bishop on b4 idea. And the funny thing is in the game by Magnus Carlsen against Dean Liren, Magnus Carlsen played knight on c3, a more aggressive approach to the game. Here d5 was played by Anand, and now knight on c3. Still common theory, bishop on e7, and the most common way is this move, bishop on f4. So we have now this so-called queen's gambit decline, the Harvard's attack. In some occasions, if the position allows it, you can maybe play something like e3 and then c5, try really to block out black's position. But here after castling and e3, here Viswanathan Anand plays the most aggressive line, this c5 move. This c5 move leads into this positional in this positional setups, like in this Tarrasch defense against d4. So with this early breakthrough in the center, white has lost a little bit of tempo by developing the bishop. So you see white will need two more moves in order to castle. So that's this aggressive approach. Viswanathan Anand of course plays very well this position. So d takes c5 was played. Now bishop takes on c5, and now Karjakin could have maybe taken here and continued the game with this isolated pawn situation. But after knight on c6, maybe black can try and push this pawn on d4 and really simplify the position. So that's why queen on c2 was played by Karjakin, going into a more tactical approach of this queen's gambit decline. This line has been also played between Magnus Carlsen and Fabiano Caruana in their world championship match. So I think both of the players are really familiar with this particular line, so they have played these moves very fast. So here knight on c6, also common move in this setup. Rook on d1, very aggressive move. So Karjakin delays a little bit the situation in the center, so of course you can take because of the pin. But now the threat could be here really to take d5, but still white has to secure the king first and then make maybe some progress in the center. Queen on a5, and now we have a3, and here rook on e8 was played, and now knight on d2. You cannot really play the move b4 here. It seems that you can win a piece, but it's really not so, because we can play knight takes on b4, and then here a takes b4, bishop takes on b4, and this knight is pinned, followed with knight on e4, and it's game over here for white. So that's why knight on d2 was played, and now e5. And okay, here bishop on g5 was played, also this common theory, and here Anand finds a very nice aggressive move, knight on d4. So immediately attacking the queen. You cannot take, of course, e takes d4, because then you get e takes d4, opening the e file for the rook. Bishop on e2 can be the continuation here. D takes c3, and if queen on c3, then we have this annoying stuff here. Queen on b6, aiming here on this f2 pawn. You cannot castle because you lose the bishop here on e2. So this will be also, I think, a completely winning game here for Anand. So that's why queen on b1 was played, not taking the knight, and now bishop on f5. Now Anand uses this tempo. Bishop on d3 was played, and now bishop takes and queen takes on d3. Now the real threat is, of course, maybe in the next move to play finally the move b4, but of course knight on e4 was played, creating the spinning idea here, and knight takes on e4, d takes e4 was played, and now queen on d2. And here Anand could have gone maybe knight on b3 immediately and try some perpetual things here. Queen on c2, maybe again knight on d4. If you take, then again e takes d4 is a little bit tricky. So as said, you cannot take with the knight, then f5 will come, and similar ideas. So maybe Anand could have gone here into this perpetual things here with simply playing knight on b3 and then knight on d4. But okay, he decides to go knight on e6, and we have now knight takes on e4 finally with an attack on the queen. So now really Karjakin is searching here for simplifications, wants to trade off the queens and continue the game with one pawn up, which could be, of course, a very nice continuation. So queen on a6, attacking the c4 pawn, and now really Karjakin has to secure the king because the king stayed in the center too long. So castling was played, queen takes on c4, and now queen on d5, also searching for simplification. Queen takes and rook takes on d5. You see, white's position is good because we have already occupied the d file. You cannot compete with his rooks on the d file because the bishop is aiming on the d8. So very well and active play by Sergey Karjakin. And although it seems that, as I said, the position is simplified, still there are so many tactical possibilities with this knight and the bishop. So here black has to be really now fast in the development of the pieces. So here bishop on f8 was played, try to maybe bring the bishop on this diagonal with some f6 or f5 ideas, or h6. So simple improvement of the position, try to aim maybe this b2 pawn, and here bishop on f6 was played. Great move, I think, by Karjakin. And although the evaluation here is equal, but I think in these rapid games you can allow such a move, because here if you take g takes f6, then knight takes on f6 with a fork on the king and the rook, of course, king on g7 would be the continuation. Now you see we can simply take the rook, rook takes knight, and we are continuing in the position with the rook and the pawn for 2 pieces. But here simple rook on d7, really occupying this very important 7th rank. Okay, it's defendable here from black's perspective, but as I said, in these rapid games maybe it could be also good continuation. So that's why after bishop on f6, Anand didn't go in this line. He simply played actively with the rook from a to c. Bishop takes on e5 was played, and now knight on c7 with an attack on the rook. Bishop takes the knight, and rook takes knight on c7. And okay, black is now pawn down, but has the bishop, which could be really a drawish game. So here Anand has to battle for a draw. Here knight on d2 was played, also an improvement of the knight. We want to place the knight maybe here on this d4. This would be an idea to really fix it on the central square. Of course, the knights are the best on the center squares. Rook on c2 was played, and now rook on b1. Rook on e6 was played, and now king on f1. You see the importance of this move. This move has some tactical possibilities here. So great calculations here by Sergey Karjakin, because of after rook on b6 we have b4, and now a5 was played, and here knight on f3 is the continuation, of course, with the idea to again fix the knight on d4. But the problem is after 8x b4 and 8x b4, you cannot really take with the rook here on b4, because if you take, rook takes, bishop takes, then rook on d1 with the check, king on f8 has to be played, and here knight on e5 with the preparation to play knight on d2, and then you lose simply a piece. So that's why you see this king on f1 was really important, because now black is not threatening checkmate here anymore on the first rank. So as said, in this a particular time, in such a small time, Sergey Karjakin calculated this very nice tactics. So you see, he defended the pawn through this very nice tactics. So here, after 8x b4, bishop on e7 had to be played, and now you see b5, and again white is continuing the game with the pawn up, which is very important. And the good thing about this pawn is that it's on a like square and it cannot be attacked by the bishop. This is important. As said, we will see in the continuation, it has a huge importance, this b5. So g6 was played. Now g4, you see Sergey Karjakin is playing simply with the pawns on the like squares, on this opposite colored squares. Of course, we don't want this bishop to attack our pawns. h6 was played, and now king on g2. Bishop on f6, now finally the bishop gets on a good diagonal, and now king on g3 playing actively with the king. Here rook on e6 was played, h3 also also an improvement of the position, rook on e7, and now knight on e1, also searching for some improvements of this knight. Maybe now knight on d3, then maybe knight on c5 would be the idea. Rook on a3, knight on d3, and now king on g7 and king on f3. You see, Karjakin is playing now really positionally, slowly, taking it slow, really try to improve first all of the pieces, playing with the knight, playing with the king actively. The rook here on d5 is on an active square. This rook is maybe a little bit passive because of the defense of this b5 pawn, but again I'm pointing out that you see Karjakin has brought all of the pieces on like squares, so that's how you should play against the bishop. You should really place your pieces and your king on this opposite colors colored squares. Here bishop on h4 was played, and now rook on b2. Of course, there were some tactical threats here, maybe on f2, so that's why rook on a1. Viswanathan Anand doesn't want to simplify the position much more, because he wants to stay with the rooks, maybe playing actively here on this first rank. Rook on c2 was played, and now rook on b1. We have rook on c8 again with the idea to trade off the rooks. Rook on b3. Now rook on c8, rook on e6, and now king on e2. This is also an improvement of the king. Maybe now the idea would have been maybe to go f3 and then e4, again bringing all of these pawns on like squares and try to fix the knight, as said here on the square c5. So that's why here rook on a3. Of course, we had also some fork threats here on c5, so that's why rook on a3, knight on c5, finally bringing this knight on this most active square. Rook on a2 first with a check, and now king on d3, and now rook on e7. Rook on d7 with the idea to trade off the rooks, of course. Rook takes, knight takes, and now bishop on f2. And it seems now that Anand has equalized the position. It was, so it's really now an equal position. But here after rook, pardon me. So this was the position. After trade of rooks, we had bishop takes on f2, and as said, this is now really an equal position. Rook on c7 was played with an attack on the pawn, but now you'll see Anand's problems. Rook on a3, king on c4, bringing the king more into the action. Of course, we want to take off this pawn and create a pass pawn situation on the b file. And okay, Anand took here the rook on e3, which is perfectly fine. Okay, you have taken now pawn. Here Karjakin takes the pawn on b2. But now, really, Anand makes the decisive mistake. He takes the pawn on h3. And that's now the problem, because you see, Karjakin can really regroup his pieces with king, knight on e5 first. king on f6, and now king on d5. So you see, you cannot attack the king here on d3 or similar, and now the f7 pawn is hanging, and in the next move we can also take maybe here the g6. So as said, the decisive mistake here, Anand should have played more actively with the rook, try to compete with this particular pawn, or maybe just even give up the bishop in some occasions for this pawn. Here Sergey Karjakin, of course, after king on g5, rook takes on f7 was played, and this is now a winning endgame here for white. Bishop on e3 was played. Now rook on g7, you see the g6 pawn is saying bishop, king on f4, and now rook on g6, and now this knight is centralized. We are really a pawn up here. King on g3 was played, b6 simply going forward. You cannot give up the bishop now for the pawn, because this pawn is protected. That's the main problem. That's the, if you could have gone maybe into an endgame with this pass pawn situation and against the knight, it would be a draw, but white has still a pawn, and it's very well defended here by the knight. So as said here, after b6, rook on h1 was played. Now you have to bring the rook behind its pawn. Here b7 was played, of course, rook on b1, rook on g7, bishop on f4 with an attack on the knight, knight on c4, rook on d1. Now of course king on c5, going behind this knight, really hiding a little bit behind this knight. Rook on c1. Now rook on f7 with an attack on the bishop. The threat is of course to take the bishop and then promote here to queen on b8. Rook on b1 was played. Now king on c6, bishop on b8. Here rook on f8. We have rook on b4. Also here simply Karjakin can really take. Rook takes on c4, king on b5, and rook on c1, rook on g8. And in this position Karjakin resigned, because in the next move of course you can play something like rook attacks the king, but here king on c6, and in the next move we can really promote the queen. And this is now of course a completely winning endgame here for white. So as said, great game by Sergey Karjakin. I think Anand could have drawn here, but made this decisive mistake by taking the pawn on h3. As said, but I think it was really a dynamic game, a great game in this rapid time format, and I'm really looking forward to see what how Sergey Karjakin will continue in this very nice tournament. In the next round, Sergey is playing against Magnus Carlsen, so it will be a clash. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Meanwhile, you can watch my other commented chess games from the series, and you can also watch my best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And you can also subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.